Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. As you can see, I have with me Brigadier S.K. Chatterji, a renowned voice in strategic affairs concerning India, the region, and the world. I have an interesting subject for him today, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a while now. India and Pakistan relations have, been in discussion, especially since the Shahbaz Sharif government has come into play. Now, a lot of people are asking, rightly so, the question, is this something new or is it a repeat of the entire shebang that we've gone through for the past 75 years? And that is my question to Brigadier Chatterji. Thank you, sir, for joining me for this interesting discussion as to what is Pakistan looking from India. I mean, it's a confusing subject.
Thank you, Aadi. Thanks for getting me along. And always nice to be there on your platform. Let's go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So, the Pakistanis, whenever they talk about anything, I guess it's like their fallback plan that they mention the UN Charter. Even today, anytime there is something that happens, it's always, oh, UN Charter and this and that. Little do they realize that their leaders also signed something called the Shimla Agreement. Now, I just request you to kind of elaborate on this. Doesn't these two kind of clash?
Right, Adi, it's a long story and it's been talked a lot, this particular issue about what is really applicable and what's not really applicable. I think those of us who look at it rationally have no doubts about it. When you signed the Simla Agreement, and that was far, far later as compared to whatever happened in the United Nations in 47, 48, 49 when we won the independence and they crossed over and attacked Jammu and Kashmir. So I think all that is known to everybody. But however, I will just give you the basic facts of the story. You see, the extension was really agreed to by the Maharaja on the 26th of October 1947. And Indian troops were immediately airlifted to Srinagar thereafter because it was legally permissible. Lord Mountbatten was the Governor General at that time in India. And he was quite aware that this is now legally permissible and our troops moved across over there. Whereas I brought in the Lord Mountbatten argument just for one reason. On the Pakistani side, there were British commanding officers still there in the units, and they did not allow an immediate deployment of the Pakistani army elements, at least not openly. Whatever came in, let's say, as covered as those Lashkars, etc., with the cover of being Lashkars, etc., local militants. That's different. But otherwise, the army they were not allowed. But of course, as the battle progressed, they were allowed or they moved in on their own whatever, but they were there in the battle. So that is where it starts. Now, at this point, is the story about the United Nations, which takes off. The UN Security Council passed a resolution, it's called Resolution 39, 1948, and established the UN Commission for India and Pakistan. Later on, UN Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan also came into being. But we will go to first the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan, because that's got some relevant points there, which they had delivered then. Now, the UN CIP, this particular mission made 3 visits between 1948 and 49 to this troubled area of Jammu and Kashmir along the borders. Now, in 1948-49, when they came over there, they came out with the way of resolving this, which is 2 parts, really, primarily 2 parts. First part, and that's important. The first part, which was to be executed first, was that Pakistan was to withdraw its forces as well as other Pakistani nationals from the state. Let's be very clear about that. That was the first part. In the second part, when this commission would have notified the government of India about this withdrawal part having been done, then the Pakistani withdrawal has been completed. Then India was to withdraw major forces out of this area. Major forces. It was not defined so well. After both the withdrawals was supposed to be the plebiscite. So this was what was thought about at that time. Now the resolution was accepted by us, but it was not accepted by the Pakistanis. They have no reason today to cry about it. It was not accepted by Pakistanis. The uh, state, and thereafter when we went in for a constitution for the state of Jammu and Kashmir, that was in I think 1956. So all this did not remain any more relevant, and it will be better to jump from the UN premises now to Shimla in our discussion. Now, as far as the Simla Agreement is concerned, let's be very clear that it's a bilateral treaty. It's a treaty which is ratified by both the parliaments. So it is legitimate, a document, it's a tenable document, and it can be utilized by both parties the way they have agreed to while drafting this treaty. Okay, let's take the other side also. That Pakistan, at this point in time when the treaty was signed, when the agreement was arrived at, had 96,000 men in custody with the Indians. So certain amount of pressure was there on the Pakistanis, but notwithstanding the pressure, actually speaking, the treaty favors them more than it favors us. At least that is how analysts have been talking about this treaty. Now, basic things in this treaty was uh, avoid confrontation. Very fine basic principle. Promote peace in Southeast Asia. Relation between the two countries to be as per the Charter of the UN. This is what Pakistan utilizes time and again. Let's go back to the UN for resolving this. No, I'm afraid that is not what is meant over here. In any case, what the UN was meant over, had meant then in that particular resolution in 1948, that particular thing was not accepted by these people. Relation between both the countries as per the Charter of UN was, well, you try and again, the Charter of the UN, if you really see Chapter 6 of the UN, under which most of the resolutions have been accepted, have been worked out for Indian Pakistan, the Chapter 6 primarily deals with state of conflict between two countries, and in that, it does prioritize that first and foremost, it should be an attempt between the two contestants to sort it out themselves. Thereafter, if not the two contestants themselves, the regional powers, and then only should it come to the United Nations, having, let's say, exhausted all these methods which are available. Only then does it come to the United Nations. Right. So that's what it is. It also came out with certain confidence building measure. In fact, very practical steps it came out with, which is still holding good. The ceasefire line then between India and Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir, it was to be accepted as the line of control. It continues to be accepted even today as the line of control. And along the IB forces returned to home side, deployment continued along the line of control as they remained facing each other. Along the IB, forces withdrew from the IB on both sides. But along this line of control, there's a military deployment even today on our side, and there's a military deployment even other side. Along the IB, whereas there's a BSF deployment on our side, on their side there you have the Rangers, etc., paramilitary forces. So UN resolution and Shimla Agreement, to finally put it across, the validity of the UN resolution is disputed. We accept Shimla Agreement as the final document. Accordingly, we insist on, I would say, bilateral mechanisms, whereas Pakistan insists on resolution in the United Nations because it wants to give it a global kind of a view. The problem there. Most resolutions are under Chapter 6, like I said, and the Chapter 6 by itself doesn't really ask you to go in for UN mediation. It asks you for regional, and before that, between bilateral, if possible, or trilateral, wherever the contestants is on. So that's what I would like to say about Shimla Agreement. And
I think, one of the things that you very clearly brought out, that these are two separate things which kind of, there's no connection between one of them, but the Simla Agreement is obviously what is valid today. And that, I think, conveniently the Pakistanis kind of forget. And, it's something that we've been seeing all along the place, pretty much in every discussion that happens. But sir, one of the biggest questions is that Pakistan on its own self was not so badly gone. There were times when Pakistan could stand up in the world, criticize India, and the world would listen to it. Where is the entire haft gone? I mean, is it a, if I may use the language very, very casually, sheraya thing, which has happened too often? That, or is it the factor that the Pakistanis have literally lost their credibility because of terrorism and their nefarious activities within the region, sir?
Firstly, what I would say is Pakistan is responsible for Pakistan. It is not that India spread the image of Pakistan all over the world. No, it didn't quite happen that way. Though the Pakistanis would like to believe that India has a role in it. May have had a very minor role, but certainly not the decisive role. Pakistan image deterioration is the cumulative effect of Pakistani activities. It isn't an information campaign which has been launched by us Indians against Pakistan. It is not a result of that. Now, what are these Pakistani doings that have really gone so negative that they have lost their credibility? First of all, you don't have to define Pakistan that way. I don't have to define Pakistan that way. But globally, it's been defined as a nursery of global terror, something which affects lives in India as much as it affects perhaps lives in Europe, something which affects life in United States as much as it affects perhaps life in Canada. So that's the kind of this thing. This nursery has produced such good students of terrorism, such good practitioners of terrorism, that they have spread terror all over the world. So obviously, your credibility is very low. Then Afghan instability, support to Taliban, the double game with the US is carried on and on for long enough. Everybody today sees through it that this is a double game which they played. They're the ones who removed Afghan Taliban from this thing, and they're the ones who have again got Afghan Taliban back in the saddle.
Mm.
Then I would say, if you see in the Indian context, there is no dearth of reason to have lost credibility. I can work out a lot of names, but just a couple of them which will bring straight away with your viewers. Uri, Pathankot, Pulwama. Now, do you think there will be any credibility if tomorrow Pakistan leadership, whether it's the new leadership or the old leadership, stands up and say, we will have a totally different attitude towards terrorism, we will have a totally different attitude towards solving our problems with India across the border? I don't think so. I've just named three of them. There's so much more. Gurdaspur. There's a lot more. Mumbai carnage. So, all that comes back, flashbacks in your mind. They're right there in your head. In fact, it's not a flashback, it's there in front of you always. So obviously, you cannot, Pakistan cannot blame anybody that they have lost credibility. What are the reasons? Then, rise of fundamentalist groups in Pakistan. Pakistan is also the residence of Dawood Ibrahim as much as it is the residence of Hafiz Shah and Salahuddin. And the result was Mumbai College.
Mm.
That's what we paid for it. The attack on Indian embassy in Afghanistan. Those are the results. Now, recent reports from Turkey say, I think I read this about 3-4 days back in the papers. There are a lot of people who are creating problems in Turkey and getting picked up by the local police.
Mm-hmm.
Are Pakistani origin people. They have started now having a doubt about allowing Pakistani origin people to come to Turkey. So credibility was your question. Well, you've lost credibility in all capitals, perhaps. In Turkey is also in Turkey also they are losing credibility. It's very rather difficult. Then Pakistan has little support except for YC, and YC support is entirely on religious ground. YC support is not a support that comes to you because you have a logical reason for being supported. It is purely a religious support. Now, even today, the madrasas continue to produce more and more, no lessons learned, no course correction done. They will be considered a threat to humanity tomorrow. It's already considered as a rogue state, and perhaps it's found to be stable only by countries like China, by North Korea, and a lot. For the rest of the world, they have to do a lot to gain back any credibility.
I think you brought it out very, very interestingly, sir. One of the things, I guess the double speak, if I may just concise what you said in 2 words, I think the double speak is playing double games with them that they didn't expect today. Sir, one of the things that we see that the Shahbaz Sharif government is trying to do is actually activate its foreign policy, its international relations. They realized that they were becoming the pariah of the world, and I guess that's one thing that they tried to set right in the first, months. We saw Bilawal Bhutto running to the Americans, going to Europe, going to China, and so on and so forth. My question to you is, how do you analyze this particular thing? Is it damage control? Is this building up? What is it for? Or is it basically for internal consumption? And that's one of the biggest options. And, there are certain statements coming out of this young man, Bilawal Bhutto, who today in one segment is being touted as the next leader of Pakistan, and the other segment is being touted as someone who's just gaining experience for his future. How do you see this entire thing, sir?
Now, whatever be it, I think firstly, let me admit, I think Bilawal is doing okay job, and so is Sharif doing. But I think uh, Imran Khan has left behind a couple of challenges for this people. And the first of these challenges was he had the relationship with the US, China, Saudi Arabia, the best of relationships that Pakistan had, the best of support that they have got over the last decades, couple of decades. Well, he's got them into a little bit of a rough zone.
Mm.
The Americans don't trust them. The Saudi Arabians also, had asked them to return certain amount of money, if you recall. A couple of $1 billion had to be returned immediately, almost overnight. Maybe the Chinese stepped in or something like that. But he's not been able to maintain those relationships, which have been the mainstay of the Pakistani, I would say, right through. So that's one. Now, uh, as far as their foreign policy, which way will it go? There are two talks. One is by the Prime Minister in the National Assembly, and the second is by Bilawal in the Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad.
Yeah.
Now, in both the cases, these talks give you subtle points about which direction is the foreign policy going to go. Let's accept them at face value, and they have every reason to ensure that the foreign policy gets a little bit stabilized. Foreign policy stabilizes Pakistan in the bargain, also. Now, the focus is on maintaining friendly relations with all neighbors. That's what I extract from whatever both these gentlemen have talked. And trade and investment links with states even further. That's what they say, which is a correct prioritization. Instead of going into geopolitics, they really need to go into their own economics, their own financial status, their own trade with other countries, and somehow get out of it. Even the foreign exchange reserves are hugely low. That is one. The next thing is the need to engage with India. It is Bilawal's statement, if I recall correctly, that not engaging with India has been a loss. They accept the fact that they must continue to be engaging with India. And like I said, disengagement is this thing. The Foreign Office later said that there was some this thing. They did not want like Bilawal's statement perhaps to be so bold, but whatever said, that shows the direction of how the leadership talks about it, how the leadership thinks about it. They've also linked Kashmir with an overall long-lasting peace in Southeast Asia. So that is an attempt again, I would say, to internationalize the issue. That if Kashmir is not resolved, then I'm afraid we're going to have problems in Southeast Asia. But I suppose we leave it at that as far as we're concerned. He's talked about cementing relations with traditional allies like China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, etc., and improving ties with the United States, European Union, Russia, and others. These things, those are important. Now, if you analyze this too, it's a policy which is otherwise status quo, except for this little bit of, I would say, rough patch that Imran had created. Otherwise, the same old policy, same old priority, that China is a priority, US is a priority, that NATO countries are a priority, Turkey is a priority. So that kind of a status quo. It's not path breaking, really. Kashmir remains the focus. the focus on Kashmir is not really diluted. They have related Kashmir, like I said, to Southeast Asia's peace and prosperity. So trying to make it an international issue. Now, Bilawal will possibly refocus on China, Turkey, and even Russia, as I see it, in the coming days. Bilawal is also the Prime Minister. This is what will be their focus now. China, Pakistan, China, Turkey, Russia. They will want to mend their fences with us up to a point and not beyond, as I see it.
I mean, they seem to be speaking the right language, and but international relations is funny in a certain way. The Pakistanis seem to be looking for friendships, and, and that's what you. I'm just trying to make it a little light, but that's what you hear in the narratives, that वो हमारा दोस्त है and वो उसको हमको help करना चाहिए. So the understanding in the I hope the understanding in this gentleman is a little better about international friendships, if I may put it that way. So do you see any hints of that?
Global friendship. Well, I see certain amount of. If you're talking about what has he earned as a bonus from all this, after the switchover. Well, I think before you look into it and try and evaluate what is the gain, let's have a look at where have these people gone. Where all Bilawal has visited and where all Shehbaz has visited. Let's take Shehbaz to start with, the Prime Minister. He went to Saudi Arabia. It will give you a trend that is there now in their foreign policy. He went to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Abu Dhabi, that is, from 28th April or something like that. Somewhere late April he went to that. Then he went to UK, met Nawaz Sharif also. That, of course, was to be done. And to Turkey in May. So that is, I'm taking a couple of his visits. There may be more. Now, thereafter, Bilawal visited abroad after coming to power. For 3 days, he was in New York. That's one of his mainstays, New York, and where he met Bilkin also. Met the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang at the Guangzhou retreat, where that was because of COVID restrictions, and it's not that he didn't go to Beijing, so it's not so important. Then he also went to a couple of other places other than China and this thing. But the more important places are this. The German foreign minister in between visited Pakistan. That's another input that I'd like to give you. Now, their economy is in dire straits. Now, on the 28th of December in 2021, Live Mint had a news item which read that the Pakistani rupee has recently depreciated by 30.5% in the last 3 years and 4 months. The current government, that is the Imran government. Now, this was only lower than the devaluation that was 58% during the 1971 war when Bangladesh was liberated. So that huge is the drop. Now, cash-strapped Pakistan, the advantage of all these visits has been that the IMF has agreed to give them a bailout package that is increased the old package that was already there to about 8 billion rupees and then rework the schedule of payment, etc. Now, the sources also said, these were also there in the report, that Pakistan was to withdraw its fuel subsidy, electricity subsidy, which Imran had announced for the last few days in order to hang on to power. Right. Saudi Arabia has also said they'll give $8 billion. UAE has said that they will roll over $2 billion for another year. The Chinese would pay up, but Chinese payment has been in a different style. I'll come back to that. But let's go to Saudi Arabia and UAE, between whom $10 billion is there. They are going to pay only after IMF has paid. That is the rule that they have put over there. Now, moment IMF pays, IMF goes into what is your management of your finances like. When you go into the Pakistani management of finances, you realize how much of money are they going to take to the Chinese. So it's a little difficult. But the whole process of a bailout package being there for Pakistan as of now seems to have started, and they should be able to get it to some extent. At least they should.
Interesting, sir. Interesting.
In addition to those loans that we get to see that these guys are getting now from the World Bank, the IMF, or whether they're getting it from China, US, or Saudi Arabia, UAE, whichever other countries that they're getting it from. The big issue is the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, which had this country on its grey list. It appears the FATF is going to clear the country. Otherwise, the proverbial grey list that they have, they really do not have a list called grey, but it's more a list on which you are on the watch. You're under observation. I thought they were going to stay there for a little longer, but they seem to be able to get out of it. Let's see. We'll have to wait and see before we can really say that. So that's what I would say is the advantage that the new government has been able to create for itself without having been in power for too long.
Somebody from Pakistan listening to you, sir, will turn around and say that, see, we've been saying that there is a conspiracy against Imran Khan. जैसे Imran Khan को हटाया, सब लोन, सब on हो गया, अमेरिका का हाथ है. It's if you look at the timeline, it seems quite funny. I'm not wanting to comment into the entire conspiracy theory, but what you're saying is right, that the new person has come in and he's been able to probably change a little bit of the perception with regards to the world and been able to move certain things. And I think it's a testament to what they're trying to do, good, bad, or ugly, but it's they're doing it for their own country, whatever said and done.
Adi, let me add one more issue to that.
Please, sir.
It's fine. They're doing abroad, doing well abroad. But on the streets, Imran seems to be becoming a force. He's picked up the right arguments, anti-America. Their argument. Somehow he's been soft on India. But he's picked up the right argument, which has a lot of resonance there on the streets of Pakistan, and that's anti-America. Well, let's go ahead for it.
That's another guy who's, if he would have put in this kind of smartness during his so-called regime, I think he would have done much better than what he had done.
Yeah.
He's played his game very well, especially coming on the outside with, facing off with the Pakistani army is something that is not that easy, sir. But sir, my biggest worry about the region is Afghanistan. Although India has been making a little bit of an inroad, we've got a technical team in Afghanistan right now. The Pakistanis would say the otherwise, but let's just leave that discussion here right now. My question to you is, Pakistan has, in spite of the Taliban not being so favorable to Pakistanis, they still have a huge opportunity to use that against India. How do you, see this particular game? Because at the moment they seem on the back foot, but
Adi, let's see the Pakistani larger objectives in Afghanistan. Some certain things don't change so easily. Whether the regime changes in Pakistan or it doesn't change in Pakistan. Whether the regime changes in Afghanistan or it doesn't change in Afghanistan. The Pakistani larger objectives in their own national interest should remain same and have remained the same. And what is that? That is to ensure that the developments in Afghanistan do not lead to the emergence of Pashtunistan. Right? This Pashtunistan that I'm talking about, it would be straddling parts of Pakistan and parts of Afghanistan across the Duran line, both the places. So I think their first objective is that it should not get down to a status like that. To mitigate this, they have to mitigate the spread of this particular Pashtun feeling, which is strong Pashtun feeling, which is there along the belt in their borders, and not allow some sort of a statehood try to go beyond a certain point. It's already there and it's already quite audible. Now, for the second strategic requirement that Pakistan has is to establish Afghanistan as a conduit for enhancing trade, transportation, commercial links to Central Asian republics. Central Asian republics, all of them are landlocked countries and the entries through Pakistan, through Afghanistan to these various countries, etc. So they would like some sort of a transportation network over there. Then curbing Iranian influence in Afghanistan is a very big priority for Pakistan, because the Iranian influence in Afghanistan would translate to certain amount of support for ultimately Baluchs in Balochistan.
Mm.
They're Shias, both sides, the Iranian side and the Baluch side. And so obviously there's some kind of an affiliation between these two people, Baluch people and the Iranian people. And that's why Pakistan would want Iranians to come in and start supporting their movement. So they would also not like greater Russian involvement in Afghan affairs, which I mean, I don't have to talk about it. You know the historical background of it. The other strategic interest that the Pakistanis have always had in Afghanistan, it's again not new. Today, it's not that it's just about Imran's own discovery. It's been there all along. They have calibrated in such a way that the Americans only have so much of influence, and they remain dependent on the Pakistanis. Even today, for American foreign policy objectives, whatever be in Afghanistan, Pakistanis will want a similar situation to prevail. And I'll come to the last point, and that's about India and how do they see us in Afghanistan. Pakistan would give its right hand to not see us at all in Afghanistan, that we do have nothing to do in Afghanistan, to be frank. They do not want us. They do not want us. It's not sector specific that we don't want you in security. No, they don't want us only in security. They don't want us in healthcare. They don't want us in transportation. They don't want us in Afghan infrastructure building. They don't want us to give Afghan any political support. They want us to have nothing to do with Afghanistan. Of course, that leads me to the next part of your question, and that's what should be the Indian approach? What's been the Indian approach? Really, looking at the use from a strategic point of view, like we did it for Afghanistan to start with. Well, as far as the Indians are concerned, Delhi will need to develop an effective trade and transportation infrastructure in Afghanistan. That should be our first aim. Now, we have done it. We had the Garland Highway. We have to develop the road infrastructure in such a way that we can, through Afghanistan, approach Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all these Central Asian countries. This will in turn reduce, if we can have this kind of arrangement done, this will in turn reduce their dependence on China for providing them transport infrastructure, which is something even the Americans will be with us. Washington and Delhi will jointly want to perhaps fund this sometime. Like, furthermore, if we want a dominant role in the region, then we'll have to contribute and help reduce the level of US involvement over here. This part of the world, it should be possible for us as the regional, I would say, stabilizing force to be able to look after and free the US to look into Indo-Pacific, other areas, etc., whatever we want. A more robust role for Delhi, which would contribute to Afghanistan's security, stability, and economic development, is thus, I would say, a more effective and long-term strategy for us. For the US, it's better that they continue to partner with Pakistan also on the short term for counter-terrorism operations. Now, I'll call off with a small assessment of Indian achievements in Afghanistan. Many Indians have already, whether we have achieved anything substantial or not is argued by a lot. In fact, a lot of people have concluded that over the years that we have helped Afghanistan, this developmental assistance that we've gone in for, and only developmental assistance, hasn't really given us a huge mileage over there. Indian combat troops, nobody wants to deploy over there. That means good. And finally, increasing trade and investment is what is the best thing to do, perhaps.
Interesting. I think so. You've rounded it up. My last question to you was about the new dispensation. I think we kind of touched upon it, but a closing comment on Pakistan overall and their approach towards India. I mean, we know what our approach is going to be. It's watch, cause, and probably react. to Pakistan. But what is their approach to India, sir?
Right. Let me put it across like this. That let me wish Shehbaz Sharif a very fruitful tenure, obviously. Whether he's got a truncated tenure only, whether he gets back after the next election, whatever be. Now, my point is, you see, it does not matter whether it's Shehbaz Sharif, it does not matter whether it's Nawaz Sharif, it does not matter whether it's Imran Khan. My point is that the deep state in Pakistan continues to remain all powerful. I'm afraid you've got to there's no way that you can cast your vote other than for the motion, the way I say it, that the deep state is there and it's very effective in Pakistan. Now, a big issue is who will be the next army chief. Now, if the current army chief tries to remain in saddle any longer than he's already been in saddle, then I'm afraid there's going to be a problem within the army also. And there will be a problem for the government also in the bargain. So that's a very big issue which is yet to be resolved. Who's going to be the next army chief? Now, after that, if you say new dispensation may not be able to, but surely needs to make a purely non-military and aggressive strategy, agree with the LOC being the last line to be drawn as a boundary on the maps, and stop fretting about Article 370 and shifting focus onto J&K like that. They have to give it up. They have to give it up. They have to somewhere or other realize that they have reached a point of saturating the whole world with this issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and it no longer generates the kind of interest as it generated 40 years back, 50 years back. I'm afraid those days are gone past and it's better to leave them behind. The West today is ready to accept Pakistan after the Imran Khan government has gone. And it is, I think, important for Pakistan to take advantage of it. I think that is about as much I would say that Pakistan should do in the near future. As far as we are concerned, I would like to put my money where I see that actually something has happened. I would like to really be able to anticipate with any amount of surety that we are seeing a new regime in Pakistan and there could be a change for a lot better. I'm afraid it hasn't happened too often in the past.
A very optimistic but a realistic view, if I may say so, if I may take the opportunity to actually say so. But what you're saying is absolutely right. There is Pakistan needs to get a little realistic and recognize the realities of the world. It's not the India of the 1960s where we were a weak power. It's not the same anymore. Today, India plays with the big boys, and the Pakistanis need to realize the advantages it would actually carry for itself if it would just normalize with India. And all it will cost them is their rhetoric. I understand it's going to be quite difficult for them to lose, but I guess for their future, as you said, it is something that they must do. Thank you, sir, for this enlightening discussion on an old wine in a new bottle or a new bottle with some old wine, the same story in different day. But I don't know as per se what the future of Pakistan is. We hope for the best, but things don't really look that well. Till next time, sir, for another analysis on another interesting subject. Jai Hind, sir.
Right. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Aadi. Jai Hind to you. Jai Hind to your viewers.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you.